Welcome back to Tomb Raider Tuesday, lovelies, and subsequently, welcome to hell. Here we are in Atlantis, the penultimate stage of the game, and while this one doesn't offer you much in the way of puzzles, it is instead going to batter you over your pretty head with an intense trial by combat. 32 enemies to put down in this level, and there's no bats, no rats, no easily avoidable panthers, wolves, or dopey bears to make up the troops. Deadly Atlantean terror beasts, every single one of them, each with the ability to kill you dead if you let them get too close, or at least deal a heavy sucker punch to your health bar with their relentless fireballs. Yes indeed, this will be the toughest challenge of our 100% no medipack run so far, but with patience, skill, and a whole lot of prayer, we'll come up trumps, like we always do. Onwards, Crusaders! We have abominations to purge. Now, as you'll have seen back in the first chamber there, many of the monsters here spawn from giant green eggs or hatching pods, so when you clap eyes on one of them hanging on the wall, proceed with extreme caution. They usually won't pop until you're smack bang in front of them, so be ready with an evasive backflip, and be sure you've got yourself some space to hop side to side so their darts and fireballs don't wallop you in the guts. Back right at the start there was a tricky one because there's not much room to maneuver coming out of that opening tunnel, so it's a lot safer to sit there and take a couple of darts than meet it in the open and risk a mauling from its devastating melee attack, or give it any time to close you down while you're awkwardly recovering from smashing into one of the walls. But for the majority of the attacks you suffer here in Atlantis, good space management will see you through the worst of it. Most of the puzzling here comes down to just throwing switches. There are a lot of goddamn switches in this stage, and not all of them do good things to you, so the first time through you're really just dealing with trial and error scenarios. Safer to let this cheeky little monkey come upstairs to you. Oozes all the way now, oozes all the way. There's a reason you only get them so late in the game. It's a strong hint that the time has come to abandon all other weapons and embrace the sweet automatic death dealing that only these beautiful silver angels can afford you. That lets us out the first room and into the big wide world of hurt, and you get a lovely shot of the twitching, pulsating body horror that makes up the walls and floors of Atlantis there. I mean, this whole stage is a very sudden departure from the dusty tombs and lovely Greek sculptures and Egyptian wall paintings. This is where Tomb Raider ultimately shifts from ghost movie to full-on splatterfest, because I do think there has always been quite a strong undercurrent of horror flowing through these games. I mean, listen to it, right now. Hooray! Okay, now listen to it. I'll try as hard as I can in editing to mix it so that you can hear what I'm talking about there, but there is a very ominous sounding heartbeat that thumps along right the way through the level. Some places you can hear it much clearer than others, when the gunfire melts away, when you're away from the deep rumble of the lava, when the ambient moaning and scraping drops off. There are points in this stage where you're alone in a tunnel somewhere, having a rare breather from shooting newborn mutants to death, and all you can hear is boom boom, boom boom. It's extremely disconcerting, and indicative that this hellhole is actually a giant womb. I'm not sure it's even symbolic. I'm pretty certain that this is now officially Womb Raider. All 20-year-old jokes and probable porno spin-offs aside. That's gonna hatch and make our lives miserable as soon as we clear this gap. Oh, how we mocked the winged Atlantean back in the sanctuary of the Scion. They're nothing to laugh at anymore. If you see one, you better fucking kill it, because it will crawl across the entire level looking for you. And seeing as a lot of this stage loops back around into one giant central tunnel, they have a damn good chance of finding you too. And to add insult to injury, just to get on your bloody nerves, sometimes they'll go missing. Sometimes you'll get to where the red fuckers are meant to be clumsily flapping around, and they just won't be there. Like, just around a minute or so back when we shot that one that was hilariously running on the spot on the little outcrop, I'd say he's there maybe 50% of the time, maybe even slightly less. Sometimes you have to go outside to blast him out the air. I mean, that's fine. But sometimes he gets himself stuck in a tunnel on the other side of the shaft. And if you want all the kills, you gotta go in there and get him. which I must say he reacts very poorly to. He's stuck until he sees you. Then he remembers how not to be a complete fucking retard and gets back to trying to rip you a new baby pocket. There's a secret up that way we'll grab when we loop back around here in a second. So, Atlantis. It's fucking Atlantis. My goodness. I'm sure that the majority of you have a pretty fair idea of what it is, or rather what it's supposed to be. We touched on it briefly in the City of Carmoon video, but for the benefit of those that only know it from the crappy Disney movie, or the surprisingly decent Stargate spin-off, or the Donovan song, or the football club from Finland, or the Lego Range, or Stromberg's Lair and the Spy Who Loved Me, or, what else? The airline, or the city in Florida. I'll give you a rundown on it. I can just imagine somebody from Atlantis, Florida playing this with no prior knowledge of the name. What in the fuck? Where's the 7-Eleven? It's just a pulsating primordial womb wall where the mall should be. This game is bullshit. No, calm down. Atlantis is a made-up island. Please note that. Made up, fictional, fabricated, imaginary, make-believe, an invention, not real. There. Saved you 2 weeks worth of nonsensical History Channel programming. You're welcome. A fictional island from the writings of the Greek philosopher Plato, specifically from the works Timaeus and Critias. Both of these were written as conversations between Plato himself, his teacher Socrates, the Syracusan general Hermocrates, Timaeus of Locri, who may have been a real person as he's portrayed as a philosopher taught under Pythagoras, but there are no records of his existence outside of Plato's writings, and finally Critias, who himself was an author, but also a leader of the 30 tyrants, who were a brutal oligarchy elected to rule Athens by the Spartans, to whom they lost the Peloponnesian War. In the 13 months that the 30 tyrants were in power before they were defeated by a mass uprising, they managed to wipe out 5% of the population of Athens, mainly by executing and exiling them, especially the rich ones, so that they could seize and liquidate all of their assets, as well as hiring a 300-strong gang of whip-wielding goons to stalk the city streets, dishing out beatings and punishments to whoever was pissing them off at the time by, existing, mainly. They weren't big fans of that. But anyway, these two dialogues are about what you'd expect from your standard ancient Greek philosophical texts. Musings on the nature of man, the hubris of nations, natural phenomena, and the origins of creation. But, in Critias, we're told the tale of a war between the ancient Athenians, who lived 9,000 years before the work is set, and the Atlanteans. Now, in the story, Critias tells Plato that the tale of Atlantis was passed down to him through 4 generations, beginning with his great-grandfather, who had it told to him by the Athenian statesman Solon, who heard it directly from the priests of Egypt. Atlantis lay just beyond the Pillars of Hercules, which was the ancient phrase for a pair of ridges at the entrance to the Strait of Gibraltar, so named for it supposedly being the westernmost extreme of Hercules' travels during his legendary 12 labours. Now the island had belonged to Poseidon, god of the sea, where he had fathered 5 sets of twins with Cleito, the daughter of Evenor, a man who was one of the original inhabitants of Atlantis. And the firstborn of this demigod brood was Atlas, for whom the Atlantic Ocean was named, and he became the first ancient king of Atlantis, given the mountains where he was born to rule over. The rest of the island and its inhabitants were divided among his 9 siblings, as Poseidon himself began to carve out the remarkable architecture for which Atlantis became renowned. Circular moats both separated and secured the cities throughout the island, while allowing ships to sail through them from the sea and to the hill that sat in the centre, atop which there was built a great temple to Poseidon, housing a giant golden statue of him driving 6 winged horses. The entire island was said to be larger than both the entirety of Asia and Libya combined. Atlantis was rich in timber and orichalcum, a gold and copper-like metal that the inhabitants mined from the mountains. Elephants were also abundant, inhabiting a varied landscape of long plains by the sea, and swamps, marshes, and springs, both hot and cold. The life was good and bountiful for the favoured children of Poseidon, but in time the Atlanteans became corrupt and avaricious, and with an army of thousands and a navy of around 1,200 ships, embarked upon a conquering spree that saw them enslave parts of Libya, Egypt and Europe as far as Tyrrhenia, which was the ancient term for central Italy. It was the Athenians who led an allied resistance against the Atlanteans, defeating them and driving them back to their home in the ocean. Shortly after, Atlantis was punished by the gods for its misdeeds and, in just one night, was struck with a great earthquake that sank it down under the sea, leaving only a giant mud shoal in its wake that made passage for ships impossible. It disappeared, its outlying lands liberated, and all records of its existence erased, except in tales and myths handed down through the generations of Africans that had suffered the subjugation of its rule many thousands of years before. The end. So, what is it that makes people believe that Atlantis truly existed anywhere besides the fanciful minds of Plato, who really was just trying to make a point allegorically, as he often did? Well, let's examine a few scraps of evidence that we have. First off, throughout Timaeus and Critias, Plato states that the story is true and is real history. How he could possibly know that from a tale passed on to him through 9,000 years by a single man without anybody to back him up heavily suggests that the context in which he's saying that it's true is a fictional one for plot purposes. But okay, let's also consider that it was accurate that parts of the Atlantic Sea were impassable due to large mud banks, and knowing this displayed a level of geographical savvy that the Greeks could not have possessed from their own voyages. But let's also consider that the Greeks traded with and heard stories from a great number of civilizations, and back then sea levels were a hell of a lot lower, which made a lot of early sailing and naval expeditions difficult. Impassable mud banks would have been much more common, along with treacherous winds and currents and barrier reefs, so even an educated guess that there's a part of the Atlantic Ocean that you can't float a boat over is going to have a pretty damn good chance of being true. In addition to that, putting aside the fact that there are just no other records or stories or writings on Atlantis anywhere besides the two works of Plato, which, for such a fucking cradle of civilization, you would really think that there would be, somewhere, there simply is no evidence whatsoever to support the idea that mankind was anywhere close to capable of developing a culture as sophisticated as the Atlanteans are portrayed as having anywhere on Earth at that time. Not a sausage. 9000 BC is the date that Atlantis is supposedly sunk by cataclysms. 9000 BC. Everywhere else, we're just getting around to domesticating goats and dogs, making clay bricks. Asia was just beginning the Neolithic era. People are trading in salt and flint, and here's an island in the middle of fuck knows where, just digging moats, mining, building temples of fucking great golden statues, and floating navies of 1,000 ships off to the continents to enslave their people, with what must have looked like the Tool Age equivalent of bloody laser guns and UFOs. Just does not stand up. Now, in retaliation to that, supporters of the existence of Atlantis point to a mummified body that was discovered in a cave near Fallon, Nevada, that was imaginatively nicknamed the Spirit Cave Mummy. It is, to date, the oldest mummy found in North America, and although it was initially only believed to be a couple of thousand years old, further investigation pushed that date way back to 7400 BC. Now, what's most interesting about the mummy is that when it was found by a husband and wife archaeological team, who was sheltering in the cave from the desert heat after the husband injured his ankle escaping from an enraged rattlesnake, it was wearing shoes and shrouds made from moss and marsh plants that had apparently been woven on a loom. Now, that find alone pushed the technology that we thought our primitive ancestors were capable of way back, but there is a massive difference between slippers and a cloak made out of swamp weeds and a race of impossible prodigies that discovered everything that everybody else did literally thousands and thousands of years before. I mean, the most damning thing about the idea of a conquering mega advanced race sweeping through Africa and Europe before 9000 BC is that you would have thought that this immense empire that they were supposed to have had, this incredible far-flung sovereignty, would have left some trace in the lands that they occupied. Anything at all. You would think that they would have passed on at least some of their extraordinary knowledge onto the many cultures that they enslaved to further anything like crop production or material harvesting, or maybe they'd even build themselves a fort or two anywhere at all. But there's nothing. Not only did the Atlanteans lead an unprecedented conquest across the ancient world while the rest of the earth was still figuring out how to get goats to give them milk without headbutting them in the balls, but when they were defeated, again, by an alliance consisting of people that were just getting used to life away from cowering inside a damn cave, they took all of their shit back across the ocean with them, back to their islands, which then conveniently sank. Right you are, pal. And the thing is, a lot of these modern ideas about Atlantis come from a book that was written in 1882 by a guy called Ignatius Donnelly, who was a US congressman and a very amateur scientist, called Atlantis, the Antediluvian World, which read Plato's account of Atlantis as literal fact, and proposed that every ancient civilization had been influenced and descended from this mighty mythical island in the middle of the Atlantic. He basically championed the concepts that the Atlanteans were responsible for igniting the Bronze Age, that it colonized Egypt and built it up in its own image, that the natives of Atlantis were the progenitors of the Aryan race, that they invented the Phoenician alphabet, that ancient sun worship originated there, and God knows what other shite. It's been years since I read it, and I honestly doubt I will again, but the conclusion to the Atlantis tale, according to Donnelly, is that the island was destroyed in a catastrophe, as in the Plato account, but a few Atlanteans escaped and spread the tale of their sunken land as what would eventually become the biblical legend of the Great Flood in Genesis. Now, the Bible is hardly the first place that the flood myth cropped up, but it seems odd there is around a 6,000 year gap between when Atlantis supposedly went into the drink before the first proper mythological account of a mighty destructive deluge appears in a Sumerian tale, the Epic of Gilgamesh, which also happens to be the earliest surviving literary work known to man. From Sumeria, in Western Asia, where the Atlanteans supposedly settled. What, did it take 6,000 years for any of them to talk about what happened? They're just rocking in the fetal position in the corner for 50 generations? What's wrong with you? Nothing. And then, come 2000 BC, one of them finally opens up about it. Oh, the island where my great 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 grandfather lived, got hit by an earthquake and sunk into the sea. I just miss him is all. The fuck out of here with your shit, Donnelly. Alright, let's break from the Atlantean tosh for a minute here. Look at this. You see these medipacks? You will never have these medipacks. You think you're throwing a switch to open the door, but all that happens is a motherfucking truckload of lava sludge chases you down a corridor. Ah! Oh no. No! Ah, I'm fucking with you. It magically stops just short of the door. We're okay. But this kicked off a bit of an irritating tradition of placing unreachable medipacks in the Tomb Raider games. You couldn't corner bug your way up to like we saw back in Palace Midas. The only way to get those ones behind the gate is to manually move them in the Tomb Raider position editor, which, believe me, I have long considered doing. But that would be cheating. And we don't cheat to get through shit, lovelies. That's not the way. We can lie, we can steal, we can murder, adulterate, covet, trick, and abuse, but we must never outright cheat, because then the game has won, and we have not. It's a regular Trapapalooza here, look. You want to hop this first because there's a filthy great flaming boulder rumbling its way down the ramp towards you. But it gets rid of the hungry clang clang gate, so swings and roundabouts, mate. Alright, here we go. Well, it's like a throne room. 3 thrones for 3 kings. Or 2 kings and 1 queen. Sitcom gold in the making, but obviously Tomb Raider went in a different direction with it. Thankfully, one of the thrones has a retractable seat here. Let's hope it's Natla's, and she comes in here to sit down like, "Who's been fucking with my chair? It was I, Lara Croft, your great nemesis and foil. I have lodged your seat into that cozy little hole in the wall, where it can never be retrieved, and now, I'm going to machine gun your tits into compost." Dagger, 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 dagger. What do you think? Is there a case for me voicing Lara in the next game? I think it was a pretty fine performance myself. Imagine it. Imagine how glorious it'd be. Square Enix revealed the new voice of Lara Croft to be a cynical Yorkshireman. We're reinventing Lara for the new age, genderless, and too apathetic to kill anything. I think I'll make a pretty good fist of it myself. I'll be Lara. Welcome to Croft Manor. This is where I hide all the shit I stole from the foreign embassy. I mean, I didn't steal anything directly from the embassy itself, you know, but... Oh, no, I walked out there with a pen once. My mistake. God, I just can't help myself, can I? Anyway, if you want to... Oh, I see you figured out moving already. Have you played this before? Go on then. Do a jump. Do a jump for me. Fucking hell, you're a sharp one, aren't you? Right then. Hold down the walk button. Keep it held down, because this level's about 3 minutes long otherwise. You want your money's worth, don't you? Bloody hell, you skinless horse bastard. His hooves weren't even on the floor when he fired that first shot. He hatched shooting. He still had eggshell on him. He's a prodigy, that one. Alright, prepare for trouble. You have no choice but to run for your life here. As we move through this arch, we'll get a flying Atlantean and a crawler coming straight at us with 2 more down here, so it's important you get to higher ground as soon as possible. That'll do us. Even at full health, you're gonna get badly hurt if you stand and fight up here, and we're really not at full health, so we'll go back for them in a minute. You might have been able to see something else in the opposite corner that somewhat suspiciously resembles us firing 2 guns there. We'll get to that in just a moment. Just let me wipe out inverted Lassie here. Heal, Lassie! You mad furless fuck. You keep to your side, freak. I'll deal with you in a second. Don't worry, it's not dangerous. Right, unfortunately, there's no way back up the slope. Which wouldn't be a problem if we didn't give a shit about killing everything in the game. But, sadly for you, I do. Deeply. I'll be very sad if we don't. So, our only choice is to wait here until the 2 Atlanteans upstairs grace our line of sight enough times to shoot them to death. Now, I'm not gonna lie, we may be here a while. So, I'll either fast forward this in editing for you, or I'll regale you with a recipe for my amazing Pozole Rojo. So, you're gonna want some trimmed boneless pork shoulder, chicken broth, a white onion, about 6 cloves of garlic, and then dump half a bottle of brown sauce over the bastard and you're done. Enjoy! Alright, on to the best puzzle in the game. Meet your doppelganger, aka Bacon Lara. She does exactly what you do, your every unfaltering action, except she does it all on a mirrored axis. You run to one corner of the room, she runs to the opposite. But despite how adorable she is, and what a superb and terrifying crime-fighting duo you would make together, Bacon Lara must die. Throw this switch on the wall here, and it'll open up a nice deep mine shaft full of sweet abomination melting lava. That's right, we're gonna do a Terminator 2 job on the poor creature. There she goes, happy as you like. No idea of the terrible burning fate that awaits her. She doesn't even count as a kill on the official level death list. That's how little respect anybody has for Bacon Lara. Even that stupid mummy that falls over in Qualipec's tomb got a stat for that. Whoopsie daisy. Down she goes, back to hell. I always find that part depressing. What did she ever do to anybody? You know? She's the only Atlantean that you've met that hasn't tried to rip you in half, or throw fireballs at you, or shoot darts into your tits, or push you off a ledge, or drop their own fucking tomb on your head, or send you on a fetch quest to Peru and have you shot to death the minute you try to come home. And this is the thanks she gets. Then again, if she is a doppelganger, she's probably a harbinger of misfortune. Or evil. I mean, She hadn't done anything bad right up until the point where I forced her to commit suicide, but you know, she was probably thinking about it. I mean, not that she could, obviously. She can only do exactly what I do on an inverse scale, but no, hang on a second. Look at me. Look at Lara. Her entire career is built on slaughtering innocent animals and desecrating ancient grave sites. She does literally nothing that doesn't serve her own self-interest. She shot a child off his skateboard with a pair of semi-automatic machine pistols. It's Lara. She's the doppelganger. She's the evil twin and the harbinger of misfortune. Bacon Lara clapped eyes on her, and then 2 minutes later she fell down a mine shaft into a molten death pit. How much more unfortunate can you get? My god, the clues were there all along. My theories were right. Lara Croft is the supernatural spawn of the devil himself. Also, my god, I just nearly got my arse handed to me. I knew I'd be safe from the last one. I've used that edge along the wall trick before because this lava pit with its skinny walkways really isn't a place you want to be battling a crawler, but man, that was close. We're right at the end of the level now. 2 switches either side control the door to the structure in the middle and a bridge leading up to it. They're both on separate timers, but the door stays open for about 45 seconds, which is the first one we pulled, and the bridge only stays extended for about 15, so that's why I did things that way around. Here we are. You see the ski on there powering some sort of Atlantean hyper womb? Well, we're gonna put a stop to that fucking nonsense. Cutscene City coming up now, so I'll shut my trap so that we can both enjoy them, because I'm selfless like that.
You can't do this.
We condemn you, Natla of Atlantis, for your crimes, for the flagrant misuse of your powers, and for robbing us of ours.
You can't,
Breaking the 3 bond of consent that our people are ruled and secured under, and invading Tealpan and myself with our army, our warriors, empty from our pyramid, so that you can use the pyramid, its powers of creation, for your own mindless destruction.
Mindless? Look at you! Neither of you have 1 squirt of inventive juice in your heads. Wasters.
Let's just do it.
Tehokan!
You use the sacramental place as a source of individual pleasure, as some freak factory.
They're survivalists, a new generation.
A slaughter heap now. And you, we're gonna lock you in limbo. Make your veins, heart, feet, and that diseased brain stick solid with frozen blood. Greet your eternal unrest, Natla!
You won't rest either, or your damned continent in death. Back again.
And you? For a grand reopening, I assume.
Evolution's in a rut, natural selection at an all-time low. Shipping out fresh meat will incite territorial rages again. Will strengthen and advance us. Even create new breeds.
Kind of evolution on steroids, then.
A kick in the pants. Those runts Qualapec and Tehokan had no idea. The cataclysm of Atlantis struck a race of languoring wimps. Plummeted them to the very basics of survival again. It shouldn't happen like that.
Or like this.
Hatching commences in 15 seconds.
Too late for abortions now.
Without the heart of the operation.
No!
10, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
But we'll have to wait until next week to find out what's inside the magical mystery egg. What could it be? The vengeful charred revenant form of Bacon Lara? A slightly smaller egg? 100 chimpanzees, each more proficient in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu than the last. Lovelies. That is what we call a cliffhanger in the business, and I hope you'll be joining me next week for the grand finale of our Tomb Raider run-through as we head deep into the Great Pyramid.
learn, bitch, how we do things downtown.
Ready!